Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of the Integrate and Ignite Marketing podcast. Join me and my guests, some of the world's top innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies for scaling and growing your brand. On this episode of Integrate and Ignite, I welcome special guest Lisa Bragg to discuss the topic of leadership expertise and self-promotion. Let's face it, many people struggle with imposter syndrome and feel like they need to constantly prove themselves. But Lisa believes that everyone listening to the show today is already a leader or an expert in their work. Join Lisa and me as we talk about the well-titled book, Bragging Rights, and explore many aspects of self-promotion, including how to decide what to talk about when you feel like you have nothing to say, the importance of passion, enthusiasm, and aligning personal values with company values, the need of narrowcasting instead of broadcasting to a large audience, overcoming fears of identifying oneself as a leader or expert, the importance of self-promotion, articulating values, and sharing expertise, and why it's important to amplify each other's work and share the spotlight. The themes on this episode are confidence, courage, empowering team members, learning how to embrace your unique perspective, and how to lead with courage and conviction. Welcome to the show, Lisa. Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. Lisa Bragg, welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you. You've got an incredible background, starting your own company, working with a lot of startup, middle stage corporate companies over the years, and then taking the learnings of all that and writing your own book. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's a journey. If you look back over your life, you can see a red thread that joins things together. It takes that reflection time that most of us don't do, but It really starts with me even being a broadcast journalist and seeing that, I really wanted to help people be seen and heard. And as a journalist, I wouldn't always follow the pack. Often journalists, even back in my day, we would follow each other because we wouldn't want to miss out. But I was really always about, how can I find somebody different who would give me a different opinion or different insight into whatever it was. And so looking for those different players. And so often people would say, oh, Lisa, no, don't choose me. I'm not the expert. Go down the hall to the regular Joe. And it's like, no. I want someone different, because it was just entertaining to me to make something new. And I really valued helping people be seen and heard. And then when I started my content company, really helping people be seen and heard too. It's taking you back in time. It was 2007, and we didn't have all this technology at our fingertips, and so easy to do. And so helping companies and governments get their people, their subject matter experts on video and on podcasts for the first time. So it was really exciting. But then people would say to me, Lisa, how can I do this for myself?
Right.
And that's where I realized I needed to start developing what became the Bragging Rights formulas and the Bragging Rights book. So that's my journey.
Well, and thought leadership, expert opinion, subject matter expertise is something that is so vital today. Personal branding with any well-integrated communications program. As you know, we're an integrated firm, and when it comes to shared and earned media, these sort of strategies that we're going to talk about today can really, really help impact the ability for someone to feel as though they belong to a brand. But without that, a lot of people feel, as you've stated, that they're not the expert, or that they don't have expertise, that they don't have bragging rights. Why do people feel that expertise it's not a 4-letter word, but why is it a bad word?
Some people, it goes leader, expert, visionary. And so many of us don't even want to say that we're a leader, because it adds so much. And then if we feel like we have to prove something, if I say, well, I'm the leader in this, or I'm the expert in this, and then we expect that we have to turn around and say, here's all my credentials, here's my 1 million+ followers. See, that's proof. But we don't need that. And anyone listening to your show, they are already a leader or expert in their work, and they already have people who follow them who already value their whatever they have to contribute. But we always feel like we have to have just that much little bit more, or we're imposters, that somebody's going to
Right.
call us out on this. And no one's going to call you out as long as you're not somebody who's just watched a TED talk or two or read a book or two, right? You've already started your own thinking around this. And being an expert, it's really adding in your own thinking to someone else's research. You don't have to
Right.
have your own spin on every single thing. You do need a point of view, but you don't have to have come up with something brand new that no one else has ever thought of, because
Right.
those ideas are really hard to come by now. And a leader means that you've really brought some ideas together. So like, what is that? You're leading people along the way and pointing the way to them. So we all have that, though. It's like on our
It is.
shoulder.
Well, and I think that, the mindset is I'm constantly learning. So how could I be an expert? How could I be a true leader? What do you have to say, about those individuals that truly feel that way?
We are always learning. And that's where people talk, I'm going to say it, the imposter syndrome. I call
Mhm.
it the imposter experience, because it goes like this for those of us who are high achievers. We go, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And oh, I know so many things of this and I get it. And then it's like, oh, no, you know what? Actually, I don't really know very much about it, but I'm going to learn. And then we could become knowledgeable and then the master of it. And then we say, oh, well, I've got this one down pat. I'm going to jump to the next thing. And we start it again. It's an S curve that we continually go on. And so know that you are going to continually leap to something that you might be in the beginner and have that beginner's mindset. And just making sure that you're of the mindset of saying, yet, that we're all in the growth mindset, that I'm going to grow
Right.
into that and jump again and not worry about that time where it's like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
you know what? Yeah.
And I still have a lot of great things to share.
You do,
That's
because
just
we
it.
do often need that beginner's mindset to also ask those questions, because people
Mhm.
sometimes are like, oh no, I know too much. I can't even ask those beginner questions. So allowing yourself to go through that journey and say, it's okay that I don't know. It's an experience that we're all having, especially in this era. If you talk to people who had 40-year jobs or 30-year jobs, of course they would know what they're doing and they weren't feeling this. But
Mhm.
our era is full of it, because we're no longer in the factory era thinking that so many of us still stick to, but we're now in this imagination era and we are living in the future, and the
Yeah.
future is really bumpy and lots of things happening. So most people, even if they were the solid expert before, they're in flux. We're all in flux right now. So
Right.
you're comforted. Maybe that's your hug
Yeah.
and your blanket to know that you're in the right boat.
Well, and it's interesting because there's, expertise when it comes to, A, B, C, and D, equals, Y and Z. I mean, there's expertise regarding how to's, right? But then there's also experiential um, leadership expertise that I think, an early stage startup, someone who's just been in business for 2 years, 2 years in, he or she are going to have some incredible insights to share, and they'll be on stage as an expert based on what their experiences bring to the table.
And that's what people want to hear. What are your values and your
Right.
stories and your experiences? And then can you attach it to other things? Sure. But we want to know about you. We're humans
Mhm.
following humans. And so having that experience and hearing your stories, that's where you might give me that aha moment. And somebody else may be speaking on the same thing and they might have their PhD in it, but they don't say it in the way that's going to resonate to me and my small business and the lived experience of it. And so that's where, being willing to share all of those stories, it's a gift to other people. So
It
don't
really
hold
is.
back, and make sure that you are willing to share. And I often caution people not to always talk from, the scars. We talk from those great experiences that you've learned from. So scars, not wounds. So wounds being something that's going on right now in your small business and that you're in the depths of it. But when you have that ability 6 months, a year out to look back and say, oh, I learned all these things from it. And look at me now, I'm growing so much. That's a
Right.
great place to speak from, especially in that 2-year mark where you have had those ups and downs of the roller coaster woo
Mhm.
that we're on, and sharing those stories.
It's an interesting approach to a fully integrated marketing communications plan, but it's also a very, very interesting approach to someone that may not have a big budget, and the only thing they can do right now is generate authenticity through personal branding, thought leadership, bragging rights, whatever it might be. So whether it's early stage, later stage, big bucks, no bucks, the ability ultimately to push your point of view out is something that's very, very important. Talk to us about the importance of, no matter what the stage is, having a point of view on something that can really help develop authenticity, a relationship, the tone surrounding the brand.
I talked to my 13-year-old daughter about it because you just don't want to be like everyone else. You need to be able to have your own pillars. Here are the three things that I stand for. And so that's where, if you are talking to somebody who's exactly in your field, if you know your three pillars and they could be exactly selling the same exact widget, you're going to come across differently. And so knowing what you stand for as an individual, and then also what your company stands for. But people want, as I've said, people want to connect with humans. And so being that human willing to connect with other people, that's bigger than big brand bucks for sure, is making sure that you're seen and heard, that people can see you and know that you're real. And so often people don't put who's behind anything anymore. There's no about the real people who are part of the company, and that people can connect with you in some way or see you out at, the different networking and connecting events that we have. It's really important for a face to be there, because again, humans and connecting with other
So
humans.
let's go ahead and set the stage here. Let's take a look at a small startup, and there are 10 employees, and the CEO ultimately knows that he needs or she needs to get the voice heard in the marketplace. And then let's contrast that to a Fortune 500 company, and how ultimately you're deciding who should be the subject matter expert that is going to bring those three pillars to life. So let's go ahead and start out with the startup mindset rather.
Yeah, but there's overlap for both. But for the startup mindset, for sure, I would allow and try to nurture all of your team to be the spokesperson, and allowing them, giving them guidance of how we stand for. You've probably hired based on your values at that point. With 10 people, you have, you want people who are not groupthink where they all think like you, but they have similar values to you. And so you want them to talk about their values and to share them. And so that the things that align, so knowing your values as a company and as individuals, and then sharing that information. We want to attract the right fit people too. So it's employee engagement strategy and employee retention by having more people see you as, the halo
Right.
effect comes to you because people can see, hey, this is a really good place. So many times we get so afraid that people are going to say the wrong things on our teams, corporate or smaller businesses. They will say the wrong things, but as
Right.
long as you're putting out enough good things, people will dismiss that. And so it's
Yeah.
about building social currency with the audiences that you have. So for every audience, for everyone, I would suggest, first of all, who do you really want to talk to? And getting clear on that is the most important thing, because small businesses, we often have all these people who are trying to rally around us and support us along the way, but they might be our friends from middle school or high school who are still following us, who our messages aren't for. And we're so
Right.
worried about that. We're conflicted. So making sure that your messages are really for that direct primary client, and then figuring out your secondary client and your tertiary clients. That's your audiences, and your audience of high school people might be that third audience, and that's okay. But really, who do we want to talk to?
They'll at least provide the likes and engagement that can help it be seen to the, primary, secondary audiences.
Yeah. You have to leave breadcrumbs for what you're
Right.
about. And that's what getting yourself out there. And I'm not talking always about social media, but what can you and your teams be doing behind the scenes? So you go to a conference. What are you doing before you go to a conference? You are looking at who else is going. You're engaging with them, perhaps in an email, or if there's an association website, or if they made an app, start engaging with them early, and then make a plan to actually meet up. Most of us are there by ourselves. We want a conference BFF, right? So who is
Right.
that person? And then what's the follow-up? Most business, it's like 80% of business is lost because we don't follow up. And those connections that we make at these conferences, that we take time out of our days to go to and spend big bucks to attend, we don't follow up on that friend
Mhm.
or that potential client. And so making sure that's the follow up, that's part of self promotion. That's a
It
tactical way of
is.
making yourself be seen and heard. So bragging is about, here's my success and I want to share it with you. It's so bragging is defined as, talking about your success with pride. And I really believe that pride is also about self-love, and self-promotion are the tactics that share it with the world. So that's being on a podcast, it's, posting on social media, it's following up with a potential client in an email. That's all part of
All the above.
self-promotion. It's all of those tactics that we all want to do, but we don't do them. So that's a simple way of getting out there for a small business. And then do you want me to talk about corporate?
Yeah, let me ask a question though, which actually might help bridge, some possible similarities and differences between the two. And what we find with some of our later stage clients and more corporate accounts is that we've got a subject matter expert on leadership, a subject matter expert on, DEI, and then subject matter expert on engineering. And they determined that those things are very, very important. And then, yes, we've got some, individuals that can help, ladder up to that and speak on those topics as well. But is there a right or wrong number of topics that you ultimately should be deploying in the market based on company size?
Not based on company size. I would really say though that you really only have so many pillars. So it's 3 pillars. But as an individual, you're going to have your own pillars too. So as a company, we're going to have these 3 pillars that we really stand by. And in a small organization, those pillars are probably what the CEO is talking about and what she cares about as her values. So in my book, I write about Jennifer. She owns Cheekbone Beauty. It's an Indigenous based makeup company that's in Sephora and so many
Oh,
other
neat.
companies now. And hers, hopefully I'm not going to get it wrong, but it's sustainability, because it's
Mm.
really about what are we doing to the earth, her packaging, the chemicals she uses in her lipsticks. Like she wants it to be long lasting and make us look great, but also what is it doing to our environment? And then she's also about community, building up community around her and Indigenous communities, and also thinking about how we can make sure we give back to Indigenous communities. And she has a
Mm.
fund for that. So those are her pillars. I think they're in the book, but
Yeah.
those are the ones. And so if you know those pillars, and they also often translate into your business, and then so that we can say these are the things I stand behind. Your employees can have their own pillars too, but what are they that attracted them to that business? Because you're probably attracted to sustainability goals, and you're
Right.
probably attracted to helping Indigenous people, and you're probably attracted to community. So things like that. What are those things that really resonated with you to join this organization? And you're going to speak about them. So they can be different because our values are different, but what are they that align, and allowing them and helping them to articulate it? So while we would have 3 main pillars for our company, each person might have their own 3 pillars. So many of us in small business, though, we suffer from shiny object syndrome.
Oh,
And so,
yeah.
like, oh, I should talk about that today because somebody else is having great success and I should talk about that. I really believe you must stick with your pillars for a time. And
It's
it's
important,
nice.
we talk about this quite often when we're working on messaging for clients, and it is right now. If we're asked what we do and why we do it, everyone's going to answer the question differently. If we provide that consistency in message, and people are answering the question with the same keywords as everyone else, the amplification in the market is 10, 20 fold compared to everyone answering it differently. And that's exactly what you're talking about here.
You have to know what you stand for. Like really
Right.
take the time. So you as an individual and then the company, so that if people are speaking outside of company time, they're your employees, they are still allowed to and should talk about whatever they care about, but it probably aligns. So how can you help them make those connections to the company messages and allow that amplification to happen? We can't stop people from being on social media or doing what they do, but how can we make sure that they're saying great quality things? People want to support their company. They want to look like they work for a company that's doing awesome and is really taking care of the things that they care about. So many people, they want to make a difference nowadays. So how can you
Right.
help your employees make that difference? So are you helping them, really curate ideas that's really central to your theme, and helping them become knowledge brokers that they can
Right.
share all this? So you have a bank of information and you're helping them share it. And that'll help them align more to your values too, or the company values. So making sure that you're ahead of what's new, you're on those magazines, those periodicals, whatever it is, the social accounts of people who are already thinking about these things, that you're
Yeah.
following along and contributing and being that knowledge broker where you're really adding to the ideas. And then you're developing your own content. What is that content that you could develop that has only your unique spin, that only Lori can bring? What is that thinking that she can add to other people's content and add her point of view to it? And that's what an expert is. And a visionary is somebody who's then taking something that might be controversial or brand new and really bringing it into saying, oh, I get that now. I'm going to agree with that. Like
Yeah.
something like
They can
fracking
take,
shouldn't be taboo. Like that's
yeah,
controversial.
they can take the heat a little bit differently than a lot of people can. Moving into the corporate side of things, we have a client who is in the beverage arena, delivers a SaaS solution, and lots of different product insights that need to be shared. And what we've done with our strategy with them is we still have the same three pillars. One is corporate, one is, community, but the other one has to be product, because at the end of the day, we're selling a product. But we've got a number of SMEs within the product side based on very vertical components that each of those individuals work on. I mean, 10. And expert positioning. So a writer might be working on a story on X, and we've got a subject matter expert that can speak on that very vertical component, which is, I think, a great way for companies to think through what is the best strategy for us. I mean, it isn't just, three people or one person. You want to be able to get those expert opinions out, especially when it's very technical.
Oh, absolutely. I am not for the CEO as the hero. I think
Mhm.
that's a dangerous play nowadays. I think it's dangerous for the CEO to be just seen as the hero, but I also think it's people get tired of being invisible in corporations. And
Right.
so you can allow them to be visible in different ways. So maybe they're not going to the top international event and speaking on behalf of your company. That would still go to the CEO, but maybe they're speaking at smaller industry events and doing some lower level things that, while will give them great pride and strength and get your company out there, it's lower stakes in the game, but people
Mhm.
want to be seen and heard. It's fundamental to the human condition. And
Right.
so when it's only the CEO, and especially if then the CEO makes a big mistake, that's a problem. But if you have lots of people who are able to speak to the expertise of the company, that really then carries a wider load and gets so many more people excited about the company. And people follow people, they don't follow brands. We follow
Right.
some brands, but then we also follow, hey, I work with Beth and I'm going to follow Beth. And am I really going to follow XYZ company? Well, it's going to be there on the back burner, but they're sending out always their corporate messaging. How am I also going to think about following Beth? And so that's where, as a company, if you can help Beth to really think about where my role is and that I am somebody who can really amplify the company in a great way, then that's a good thing for all of us. And putting
Yeah.
her on stages or helping her to be seen as, the person. A lot of people that I work with, they're not even able to talk about their successes. And so that means a lot of opportunities are left on the table when they're in front of clients because they're so
Right.
afraid to talk about the successes that they've had. And so people aren't willing to pry it out of you. You have to be
Mhm.
willing to articulate it. So even at that small level, making sure that your people, when they come to the table, are able to articulate their successes, that's a huge step in moving forward.
It is. One concern I think a lot of people in the C-suite have is building, um, as you layer down and you've got your subject matter experts, is the type of tactic that is best for those individuals. So you're not building a future, brand that they can take with themselves and leave the company behind. I mean, podcasting, when we're talking about starting podcasts for companies, longevity of the host is something that is a deep consideration. And we've even said, we don't think that podcast is the right approach because that individual probably is only going to be there 5 years or 3 years. So they're going to leave at some point. How do you cross the transom on that one?
Yeah. And because that's what I did for so long, is help build up these brands, these micro brands within the company of some of their star people. And then they did go off and leave. And that's part of what I sell, is that sometimes you do want them to go off and leave though. So
Mhm.
I think we should just allow that person to be the star and integrate though other people into the podcast so they get some more voices. So that's
Right.
not just the only person on it, even though she is probably the best person. And knowing that most of us are only on a journey with a company now for a short time. So
Mhm.
3 to 5 years of having someone with us, and then they do go off and do good things. And then that
Right.
voice is still there. So I'm not about scraping the voice off of it because they've left, as long as everything is good. I think it's also, but it's integral to incorporate other voices. And if the person goes on off on vacation, the show isn't on hiatus. It's somebody
Right.
else comes in to do the show. It's like good practice when, if you have an outsourced accounting firm, if that accountant goes on vacation, you bring in someone else and have them come in and look at the books, because it just adds to the voices and they see things that we don't always see. So
Right.
bringing in a different voice along the way and having someone in the wings is good, for a good practice for it. So that's one
Yeah.
thing I always suggest when we do. I'm not against the building it around someone and that expertise, and knowing it's a limited run. So that's another thing that I've done, is that we're going to do a limited run based on, you know,
That's a great idea.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So do a limited run, five podcasts, and then there's someone else next up in line. Because then I think that variety also means we're not for everyone. And
Mhm.
so someone might not like my voice at all, and then the next person loves it, or my ideas, or my thinking, or my
Right.
enthusiasm. And so having that next person come on also adds to it. So that's one thing I would recommend, for especially for podcasts, or for mediums like videos.
Yeah, I agree. And even like fireside chats where you've got, the CEO that's perhaps leading the storyline, but he or she is interviewing his, inside experts on topics. I think that can really help position companies in a very positive light. One thing that comes to mind is building confidence.
Yeah.
So we've got these great, you've got a great brand, you've got these great pillars defined. That the expertise and the visionary mindset resides within the organization. You decide, what strategy you want to deploy based on topics, but then you've got to backfill it with people and instilling confidence in people growing them as individuals regarding confidence can be a hurdle at some point.
Oh, and again, it goes back to, so many people don't think they're leaders, or they
Right.
don't think they're experts. So it's just so much, and that we think it's like these levels that we have to get to, or I don't have enough certificates or gold stars to be that person. And so what I talk about in Bragging Rights is that we're not going to get to this magic place called confidence. It's really about, how do I make sure people have a step of courage? So giving them
Mhm.
courage to make a step forward, and one more step of courage, and another step of courage. Because then we get to that goal, and then again, we're on to something new. So confidence is fleeting. So making sure that people have courage. And so as a leader, saying to that person, you are the right person, and giving them the tools and some help along the way to get the courage to do that one step, to eventually then be on stage with me as the CEO and having that conversation, or that she's interviewing me, because it's a different dynamic altogether. So having the steps of courage, it could be even asking someone. I have one friend who I trained. She did stagehand just because she was so afraid to go
To
on
be on
stage.
stage, right?
And it is a massive conference that they have, but then she became friends with all the people behind the stage, so she saw what it looked like and how supportive people were. And so she was running around the clipboard, making sure that things were tidied up and good. So still valuable as a role. But then the next year she was on stage. She did have a few opportunities in between, but she was able to then say, oh, this is what it looks like. I now can have a lay of the land. I get at the back of end of it. I can be on stage with less fluster, because she knew someone had her back, and that somebody was going to catch her if she faltered. Because that's being on new stages. We have to know that people will support
Right.
us. And that's what people just need. They just need that guiding hand to say, I'm here to support you. So that's one thing. If you have a team member who's really afraid to go on stage, have her come backstage at an event to see how supportive of an environment stage people are. You have your team there and probably the people of the venue who are there to support you. So that takes people from here way up higher to then say, okay, I can be in front of the stage, in front of the lights myself.
Yeah. And I think, in a lot of situations like that, just doing it, the more you do it, the better you feel. So, practice makes perfect. And that really helps in those situations. You have shared so many incredible insights with us today, Lisa. Thought leadership, expert positioning, bragging rights, to me, they're all the same category. It's truly incredible insight that any company, I think, should really be deploying. What is a great success story that you could share with us today about how, sharing insights has actually helped grow a brand?
Oh, it's really the only way nowadays, actually. So I do have so many stories of people who have come back and said, you know what, we won opportunities because we were able to talk about our successes with pride and share it with others. So there's so many in the book that shares that. And you know what, it talks about retention, of bringing in the right people, attracting the right people, attracting the right fit clients, and helping your business to really soar to that next level because you're being seen and heard with so many people and putting your voice out there. So one story would be really hard to do in the short time.
I tell you what, I've got a story. So we have a client, I've talked about this before on the show, and it was thought leadership, expert positioning to get him in front of 20 investors. That was the number, 20 people. And he had $1 billion IPO 3 years ago and just sold his shares for 200 million. And so it doesn't have to be mass crowds. It can be a small number of people that really helps you achieve the goal that you've established.
That's exactly it. In the story I tell tell a story that's kind of odd because it's somebody put up a billboard and it was really just for one person.
Wow.
So that's why this isn't about screaming and being part of the noise to the loudest, largest audiences. It's about narrowcasting. So instead of broadcasting, we're narrowcasting.
Love it.
Who is that one person or 20 people that will make the difference to everything? Yeah. And that's why you have to just know who you want to speak to and not worry about everyone else. If you had that one person in the room with you that you could tell them everything, that could be game changing for you. So really getting clear on who you are for and who you're not for is a critical part of starting this work. But yeah, that's a great story of how we can really talk to the right people and be seen and be heard to them. It's again, it's narrowcasting, not broadcasting.
I love that. I'm going to remember that. Lisa, the insights you've shared today have been incredible. Congratulations to you, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm just thrilled about the book. Where can people grab that?
You can get the book everywhere. Yep. So it's online at all the major retailers, even some surprising ones too. So you'll see it everywhere. It's also available as an audiobook and on demand too as an ebook. So, but you might want to get the actual book because what excites me?
Take a lot of notes. Yep.
If you take, you'll take a lot of notes because I think one good thing about the book is there's lots of good things about the book. See, that self-deprecating comes in, which I talk about in the book.
It's just human nature, right?
It's human nature. But in the book, there's at every chapter, there's a to consider, to do, and to share, because really to consider is about us reflecting on our work and what we've done so far, because you're already great. This book is really just about how do we then share it with the world, and then to do simple action steps that you can do and to share, because we're on this journey together. So how can we help each other do these little things to really help, amplify all of us? Because I really believe that more and more of us can be seen and be heard and share the spotlight. So that's not spotlight, it's a daylight, sharing all the good work that you're doing already in the world. And so it has those three things. So you might want to pick up the actual hard copy book for doing those tasks. But if you're an audio person, it's available too. So
well, it's great. And I hope that we're sharing it with the world today as well.
Yeah, thanks. Getting the word out. I hope more people will shine and be seen and be heard. So appreciate your time, Lori.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much for your appearance on the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
This episode is complete. Head over to avocetcommunications.com for more ways to scale and grow your business. And be sure to tune in regularly for insights and motivation with host Lori Jones and her guests on the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast.